propaganda with the weed and the drugs, created the 1994 bill under douchebag we have now, the drug war thing. So if you look at the statistics from 1940 to 1990, there's a slow, gradual upgrade. From 1990 to now, that motherfucker shoots straight up. It's a business-making thing, and that's why when you get on, that's why I'm fighting to get off of, to stay off of probation and out of charges, because what they do is they bring you in front of the courts, and the public defender is charged. Their main task is to charge you with at least one thing to get you on the docket. Once you get on the docket, then they either put you in jail for so long, and then give you the option of probation or parole. Then you get on probation or parole, and even if you didn't do anything, the closer it gets to the time for you to get done, they will find something or plant something on you to get you put back in jail to go do that whole thing. It's around.
I know. Yeah.
So now here's the thing. But again, if we could teach, if we're very specific about what we teach, we just specifically focus on the corpus hermeticum. We specifically think about Hermetic thought, and we only teach the first basic principles of Hermetic thought. What if you were to go into the prisons and do that? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah. What, teach Hermeticism?
Yeah. Teach the Hermetics to the inmates instead of all of the extra stuff, so that way when they're in there, it's in a controlled environment, they have the space to do the meditations and everything, and then when they get out, they get to come to us and they get to learn the fun ritual magic.
That's even better. Yeah, because then there's no witchcraft, you know what I mean?
Exactly. They're getting their shit in alignment. They're not in a place where they're going to use any of the techniques to cause problems with other people, but it's a forward-walking thing that allows them to get their mentalism in order. It gets their rhythm in order. It gets their frequencies to the right place. It gets their alignment and their congruencies and all of these things.
Like I told Robin, with her, with the way she is and stuff. You've got to get your mentality. The first Hermetic principle is mentalism. You have your third eye, your CPU right here,
right,
has to be in sync. It has to be at top-notch operating order. Right. And it's not because of what we've been fed throughout life. It's not because of the foods we eat. It's not because of the propaganda that's pushed on us by the news and this and the music. You know what I mean?
Right.
We can't make our own decisions logically because we're so fucked up as a society. So what we need is someone like you or I or Phyllis that knows Hermetics, that knows, you have to have this in order for the rest of it to line up to get your third eye to get into the magic. Like, it all starts with the Hermetics.
Right. Well, by the way, just to let you know, I have done work in prisons.
Okay.
When I was in college, I actually organized a class for 6 weeks. There were 2 professors who used to run a debating class out at one of the prisons, and I organized, me being who I am, organized a class of, I forgot how many we were, during this 6-week semester to go out to the prisons and debate with the prisoners. There were murderers, there were all kinds of people in that group. I became friends with one of the prisoners who was a friend of someone who lived in my aunt and uncle's building, a long story, wow, who wasn't the murder actually. And he was very dynamic, handsome, well-spoken. I mean, he actually did kill his roommate. He actually hung his roommate and then slept with him for 2 days. But that was the gory story. Of course, he told a different story. But anyway, nevertheless, I got taken by him. I mean, he was very handsome and very well-spoken, very smart guy. And I used to go visit him.
Yeah.
And when he got out, I visited him in his home in New Jersey. And then when I graduated, my mother had a little party for me, and he came to the party. And I was really crazy about him for a while.
He was a murderer, but yet he was still a nice guy. He wasn't.
Well, I don't know. I can't really say that because I only saw a part of him. Right. And then, interestingly enough, I looked him up. What prompted me to look him up, I don't remember. And he died. He had a stroke, and he died several years ago. And he was president of like the International Aphasia Society, like something like I never would have expected it. But yeah, he killed his roommate over jealousy. It had to do with the song and Carole King and blah 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 blah.
That
Whatever.
sucks.
That's stuff. I mean, love though. No, love makes
And
you.
nevertheless, I did go to prisons for about 6 weeks, and then I went and I visited him for months, months.
So if we could get a system like that set up, do you think that would be an interesting way to? What happens if we get your programs into the prisons too, Phyllis?
Yeah.
Well, I agree. However, I'm not ready to go that route because I haven't even established it in the one route I want to establish it in yet.
Right, but
Um,
I mean, the reason why I bring that up is because Mike would be a great mouthpiece if he's going to be there. There's many things
uh,
that he can talk
I
about in
mean,
that
the
environment.
self care, the empathy, the self care thing
Yeah,
that would
absolutely.
that would be great.
So what if we build out an empathy program for the prison structures, so that way Mike can be the empathy director that leads them out for the prisons, so that there's less internal violence and such.
Possibly, if that could be a course to reducing violence, that I would have to, we'd have to really do a pilot study to see if that happened. By the way, do you know about Ho'oponopono?
No.
Who?
Okay, look up Ho'oponopono. H apostrophe OPON PONO.
Okay.
It was discovered by Dr. Hew Len, Len in Hawaii. And this is documented. It's not some woo woo, not true, fictitious story. This guy was a doctor, was called into a mental hospital where they couldn't retain the staff. Um, People were burned out, fried out, overworked. People were residents were in shackles. There were outbursts, you name it. And they called in Dr. Hulen to help mediate and remediate the situation. And it's, like I said, well documented. You could look it up. He never saw one patient ever. They brought him a stack of files, and he went every day for weeks and hours on end. It's based on a Hawaiian philosophy. And all he did was say, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. I have that as part of my course, by the way.
That's excellent.
I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. Now, it's really about healing yourself inside, and that, as we all know, you attract what you have inside, right?
Right.
Well, within a matter of, I don't remember this if it was weeks or months, the atmosphere started to calm. They were able to remove shackles from some of the inmates. The staff was happier. They were able to retain staff, and some of the inmates were even able to leave.
That's great.
So you can look it up. His name is Dr. Hulen, Hewlen, and it's called Ho'oponopono.
Thank you, Phyllis.
And again, that's because it's mentalism. As they were saying it, they were apologizing, yet
He
not
was.
right.
He was apologizing for them
Right.
and for himself for attracting this situation inside himself. So he was healing himself.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing about inmates is depends what environment they go back to. That's I think the crucial issue and the caveat there.
And this is
And
why there is a program that Mike and I have been talking about where we want to get people together in facilities. Like I've been looking at a place down there by Mike, which is only 1,000 square feet. But if I could set up chairs and set up the influencer academy down there, so my IFA project, right? So that way, the people that come out of prison, we're giving them, I'm teaching them how to build funnels, teaching them how to businesses online, do social media, get into their hobbies, get into their practices. They're building kits together with each other away from the drugs and building that social community, right? Doesn't matter what God they worship, doesn't matter what higher force or what have you that they're doing. They're engaging in hermetic principles. They're engaging in some social craft. They're engaging in some market and something that they can contribute back to that has nothing to do with the situations they came from. So they can reinvent themselves and literally become new people. And then they would have access to all of the resources in the Era Project. They would have all the access to the resources in the Academy projects, and they would be able to grow and develop their own version of the Academy, and they could actually get into this as our teachers moving forward. So it doesn't matter what corruption they come from in the past, they have something moving forward that helps and elevates other people.
That's the thing. A lot of these guys, when they get out of prison, they're already tainted. They go for a job interview or something. It's like, oh, you were in prison.
Yeah.
You know, they're already frowned upon for, oh, you're a convict, or oh, you got, you know what I mean?
Right.
They can come out. They can feel good about themselves. They're not going back to the same, like, yeah, okay, maybe they are, but they're not. Instead of getting back into the drugs and the selling to make money, they can actually take what they've learned and what they've thought of that time in prison and come out and put it to use through the academy to make their own money or to do whatever and not be stuck in that same rut and go back to prison. You know what I mean? The only reason they come out of prison and go back to that same rut is because, one, nobody will hire them because they're a convict, or two, it's just so rough for them, that they just can't get ahead, and it's easier to go back to prison. Yeah. If we can change that, it'll have a different turnout rate. I can guarantee it.
Oh yeah, like this is one of the things. Like this will be the hill I die on, right? When I have my shop back, right? When I get my retail establishments back in order, the only reason I got into the adult industry is because that was the adult industry didn't give a shit about where I came from.
Right.
Right? I was doing porn to get off the streets, so I was doing it one side of the camera, and then I got into the retail side after I found a very liberal individual in Georgia who took me in, Shelby and Selena. They were,
Right.
I was working for Pier 1, and they come in asking for a basket for their poop display.
Oh, yeah, you told me that
right?
story.
And then 2 weeks later, they come back looking for a rug, and they're like, hey, we like you, come see me. And 3 days later, I'm working for them for 2.5 years. And then another 2.5 years goes by, and I'm working for the guy that owns the Deja Vu company, right? Down there in Vegas, and I get a chance to speak with him a few times. But he's got a goddamn ankle bracelet on, and he can't go into his own goddamn bar because he's on probation for assaulting one of the patrons for trying to hurt one of his girls. Like, the whole thing's a fucking mess. Like, we're all a bunch of fucked up people, and nobody's got the right path in life, and everybody runs the risk of doing something incredibly stupid with their life and fucking off a great opportunity. And there should be no reason that they can't elevate their fate out of that either. And that's one of the things our community fails at most as the general populace of the world. But that's what I want to build into the academy at its foundation, because that's what happened to me. Right? That's what happens because Mike is going to be on probation. I don't give a shit that Mike's on probation. He's still a rad motherfucker, and when he gets off probation, or we get the grow facilities set up for our medicinal and religious use weed, then that will be a fucking thing, and it will be state regulated, right? Like, I don't want to do it illegally. I want everything to be above board and above the table. Like, that way we are a legal entity across everything.
I want to make sure that Uncle Sam gets his cut. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
That cut that Uncle Sam gets, even though it goes to mostly the politicians and whatever, the big league, the community still benefits from it. There, a certain amount of that does go to the community.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to a Big Brother or Uncle Sam or whatever you want to call it getting their cut, because I do think, just like any reasonable medicine, I do think it should be regulated. I do think it should be, to the point like alcohol and cigarettes, not sold to minors. Right. They can't make great judgment calls. Wait until they're older and can make their great judgment calls. You know what I mean?
Oh, right. But I want to do a large program like you were doing in Colorado with that guy, Boxcar, you called him.
Yep.
Like, would you talk a little bit about that for a minute? Like, that's just an absolutely astounding...
So when I left Pennsylvania, I went to Colorado. It was quite funny. I'll just add this in. This isn't relative, but I'll add it in anyway. I'm the type of person that I am a wanderer. I just go. Okay? And my family was trying to put me in prison here, so I up and went to Colorado. I feel bad for my wife because she was thinking we were going to move to Colorado and we were going to have a place and we were going to move on with our life. That's not how I operate. We left. We packed everything we had up into a little blazer, the cat, the dog, the rest of it went to storage. And we moseyed on out of Pennsylvania with just the money we had in our pocket, which wasn't much. I think it was like $400. So we left. We get to Colorado, and she's like, okay, where are we going? I was like, Denver. All right, what's in Denver? I said, the campground. She's like, what? I said, we don't have a place. We're homeless. We start over fresh from ground one up. Like, yeah. So we lived amongst the homeless community for a while there in Denver. And we finally got a place down in Colorado Springs. And I was like, all right, cool. So we got down there, and I got a medical marijuana license, and that was the beginning of me learning how to grow medical cannabis because, like I said, I was looking for a way off pharmaceuticals. Cannabis was my first choice, and I couldn't find a strain strong enough to help me with the pain. Nevertheless, I did get 8 or so years of growing under a university and whatnot and learned how to grow cannabis. So my time in Colorado, as I was growing this cannabis, when I would walk to the store or go up and get a burger at McDonald's or whatever, I would always look at the homeless because Colorado Springs, there's a lot of homeless. And I ran into this one guy in a wheelchair. They called him Boxcar. And he was outside of McDonald's, and I was going to McDonald's to get a cup of coffee. And I noticed, like, you know, he was down, he was digging in his pockets looking for a little bit of change. He asked me for a little bit of change when, you know, before I went in and stuff. So on my way in, I was like, you know what? I got him a breakfast, one of the breakfast meals. And I got him a cup of coffee, and I went out, and I handed it to him. And I think I gave him like $10. And he was like, really? Yeah. And I was like, do you smoke? I fucking love Colorado. He's like, smoke what? And I knew right then and there, yeah, you're a stoner. You know what I mean? Not to mention, you're probably in pain because you're in a wheelchair. And so I pulled out of my pocket a bag of weed that I had cured, it was a quarter, and I gave it to him. And he looks at me like, I don't know, like I was a black leg or something. He's just like, what's this for? And I'm like, well, I'm sure you can't afford your medicine. He's like, well, I haven't had medicine in a few weeks. I can't afford it. I said, well, there you go. Now you have medicine. I said, now don't worry about affording it. I said, if you ever see me and you're out of medicine, just let me know. I'm here to help you. And he was like, what? And me, you know, in over a few months, me and this guy got really close. And it was kind of funny because the cops were like watching me. And they're asking this guy and all the other homeless, you pay him for that? Boxcar's like, no, he gives it to me. He just gives it to me. Cops are like, what kind of guy just gives you quarters pot, you know? He's like, that guy there. So after a while, they realized that I wasn't charging for it. I was giving it to the guy, you know what I mean? It's helping him. And by the time I left, I had most of the homeless people that came to me. They didn't go to the dispensaries. They didn't, you know what I mean? They would tell me, look, yours helps me so much more than what I'm buying in a dispensary. And I'll tell you why, guys. Here's the secret. When you buy from a dispensary or you buy from a known grower, they always put sugar additives into it to bulk it up, to give it more weight, okay? When I was growing, I used a base nutrient. I used micro to grow the bloom. I gave it a little bit of amino acid for plant health, and I gave it some CalMag. That's it. Nothing more. That's all the plant needs to sustain its health and grow. And even though my buds weren't like big and super looking and like, you know, they were little and tight, it only took them 2 hits to get the effect that they would on a whole bud or so of the medicinal stuff that's for sale. Right. So that's what made my pot so much more stronger. Is I wasn't putting sugar additives and I wasn't trying to bulk it up for weight like everybody else. And so once I realized what was going on, I was able to critique a certain strain, and it worked great for pain. So a little bit of time goes by, and I moved from Colorado back to this hellhole. And that's when I found Kratom. And upon finding Kratom and cannabis, I was able to get off of all pharmaceuticals since 2020.
Yeah, you said that, which is pretty incredible.
Now, granted, you can look at me and you're like, oh yeah, you're a healthy guy. I am not healthy. I am a heart patient. I have heart disease, cardiovascular.
You told me.
I have 3/4 of a heart, so I'm not even operating on a full heart. I have a stent. I have fibromyalgia. I have scoliosis. I have degenerative disc deterioration. Like, I shouldn't even be walking. I shouldn't even be here. I died twice. Okay? Like, I'm back. Okay? You can't kill me that easy.
Yeah, no, I know you. I remember you telling me that the other day. I just went to get some of my snack stuff.
Yeah, I work for a greater force than you even want to play with. You know what I mean? Like, these gods are like, okay, yeah, you're doing what you need to do. So, in finding that, I've made it my goal to help people understand that pharmaceutical companies are getting their stuff from these plants, and they're mixed with chemicals, okay, and selling it to you.
Right.
What if you get the plant and not the chemicals? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's your mentality. You got to understand that we're not living in the world we were 60, 70 years ago.
Oh, I got it.
We're living in a world now that it's brutal. They're out to kill you. Like, they don't, you know what I mean? If you ain't corporate America and benefiting it, you ain't no good. You're putting a old folks home or putting a mental institution, or because you're not going with the narrative. And that's the problem that I'm running into today with all my crap. It's because I live different than everybody else. I'm being charged and
See, and this goes back into, again, where I want to step up with the academy, and I really want to make it known that studying alchemy, studying the pharmacological things that we can do with plants in using plant compounds, is paramount and has always been paramount as the foundation of any lower to middle income class of people. Is that normal doctors and such like that in the ancient days have always been reserved for the rich and the wealthy. And it's been the herbalists, and it's been the pharmacological things that you can do with nature and with the plant medicines and with what's commonly available through the CVS's and the like silver colloidal or gold colloid or whatever that you can use for antibacterial, antifungal properties. Like, there's some basic things that have been taken away from the infrastructure of people. They need to come back, or they need to actually have a place to get those resources again. And this goes back to why I want to be able to have our training facilities set up, so that way once the academy model is fully operational, the way that it'll look is they'll come to a facility and they'll learn for a few months, and then they'll build out a mobile storefront, such as a tiny home, and they'll get all the materials that they need to do, and then we'll get a cycle and a circuit set up so that they can go out and into the community and to provide for the resources and what have you. And by providing the plants for free, by providing the tangible ingredients, the raw ingredients for free, but offering to teach how to do the assembly of it, that's where we make the money. That's where we'd be able to pay for those infrastructures. That's where we'd be able to pay for the gardens, or the collections that we can do from nature's barbers that we can collaborate with, right? So there's a fun fella who always refers to himself as a nature's barber when he goes out there and works in landscaping. But if we could get our hands on the clippings and the offal from landscaping companies across the nation, if we could get all of those people who have ornamental or obscure or occult or medicinal plants growing in their garden, and we have barbers for nature going out collecting the sacred plants, collecting the medicines at the right harvest cycles, then we change the way the farming is done. We change the way our infrastructure is handled, and so that way we're able to get our hands on these medicinal herbs. We're able to provide them for free in donation, because at that point it's just an infrastructure service that's side by side with already jobs that need to be done. They need to have their landscape clipped, but they can donate the clippings if they separate them out in the right way for us. So that way there's less shit in the landfill. There's more use that it can go back to in the community, less waste overall.
I agree. Yeah, and let me just state, I'm not against pharmaceuticals. I'm not against, big pharma. Well, kind of am, but I'm not against modern medicine, okay, per se. Like, if I get Bell's palsy or something, I would take steroids, I wouldn't go find a plant-based substance, because the science today proves that you just need steroids for 14 days, boom, you feel better, you know what I mean? Or if I break my leg, I would go to the doctor and have them reset. You know what I mean? Like there's things that pharma is good for, but when it comes to your health, you know better. You know what I mean? You know what's going on with you. Look up WebMD. Look up, go to different research places and look up your symptoms. And, look at it yourself. Save your money. Because that's what they did back in the day. They didn't go to a doctor. They didn't go to a pharmacy. They called a medicine man. Medicine man said, oh, here, give some tea. You know what I mean? And boom, most times you were healed, you went on your life. That's the way our ancestors did it. That's the way I do it. You know what I mean? Like, I count on Mother Nature. But there are some things I will go outside of Mother Nature for and use. And like, that's why I said I'm not against the pharmaceutical industry per se, but I kind of am because of what they're doing.
Right. I mean, and,
modern medicine is good to a point. The ancient Egyptians were doing modern medicine. It stemmed into the Greeks. You know what I mean? Like, so they have came a very long way, but greedy people corrupted it. Now you have pseudoscience. So, you know what I mean? It's just use, again, mentalism. Use common sense. A lot of people kind of missed out on the common sense train.
If common sense were common, there wouldn't be a need to be reminding everybody there should be a standard. But that's just, there needs to be a wider range of versatility, because I'm not saying that you need to use herbs for everything. I'm just saying that if you wanted to use, like, what was it, golden seal mixed into a hand salve to work as an antibacterial hand ointment that can be a lotion on your skin, so you're not putting chemicals on your shit all the time, what the hell is wrong with that?
I agree.
Or how about, go ahead, Phyllis.
No, sorry. I'm texting with the guy who's he's an investor, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
And he's in Arizona, and I was trying to get him to do something with the 60 acres, 60 or 600, no, I think it's 60 acres he has, but he buys property all the time.
Okay.
He just bought 2 houses for Super Bowl Airbnbs. I mean, so he's
wow.
I'm telling him about what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
For him, he's always buying property. What the possibilities are for residential care homes.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm sorry, but I don't always get him, so he's texting me now. So I took the opportunity to answer him a few times. Sorry.
And this is good. I mean, I'm doing business. Like, we've got a meeting here in about 5 minutes with that guy who's the financial advisor for what we can work with, so you got to see what the community we can benefit with in our end too. So right. The more hands that we can bring to the table for whatever our collective projects are, and this is how we build empires, is we can recreate new industries based upon ideas that serve others.
I agree.
And it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, conquest and empire. No, this is like, what's the most reasonable and rational modern infrastructure that you can think of, right? Like Uber, right? Well, what about your care facility? Well, what about your education platforms? What about the way you become an influencer? What about the way you influence others and the stewardship that you have for whatever it is that you're going to do, right? And so this is why any action that we take, and demonstrating action that we can take, is important and paramount.
Yep.